welcome all to the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how fantastic pedal monsters are in Toyotas, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and germs. My name is Tyler, and joining me for another episode of the Snail Trail 4x4 podcast is the one and only pedal monster extraordinaire, Jimmy Jett. How you doing, man?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling better.
Good.
I was really tired today. I've been struggling today.
Oh,
but
yeah?
the interview got me all jazzed up. So
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It wasn't the beer?
it was not the beer.
Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't the In-N-Out either.
It was the amazing content and vocal cords of our interviewer that got you electrified.
It did. We got a little nerdy, which is what I love doing. So
Absolutely. It is fun.
yes. We're going to, I don't know, we're going to cruise through the housekeeping stuff today because we recorded very long with this guy. There's some really neat stories that came out. We got to hear some really cool history and got to get into the weeds on a couple of their products. So we do have some giveaways going on. We have some internal bead locks for 17-inch rims. We have a Yokohama set of tires at 750 reviews over on Apple Podcasts. The inner beadlocks are for our monthly giveaway this month. So make sure if you guys want to get signed up for that one, you go over to irate4x4.com and sign up underneath the Snail Trail 4x4 forum. Those are the two main giveaways we have going on. And then we have a really fun interview. That's all we're going to do. Because it was a long recording.
It was a long recording, and I think there's so much information in this interview that we're going to keep this intro super short so that we can jump right over to it.
Yeah. So we got Jay on the line from a lot of different places. Lightning, we're going to call him. We got Lightning on the line. Lightning is here in the remote studio to tell us all about Banks Power and a little bit of the Truck Show podcast. So I guess without further ado, go ahead and grab your favorite drinks, grab your favorite snacks. Hopefully your candy does not taste like dishwasher soap like ours did. And we'll be right on back with Jay from Banks Power.
At Four Wheel Underground, we don't do DIY kits. With 26 years of experience, we've designed and engineered suspension geometry for maximum performance and predictability on and off-road so that you don't have to. Check out Four Wheel Underground to find the best engineered Toyota suspension solutions at fourwheelunderground.com.
Hey, welcome back. Ladies, gentleladies, kiddos, boys, girls, dogs, cats, the trail dogs out there. Shout out to all you furballs. We have a special guest here in the online studio. Once again, well, I guess another interview from the online studio for you guys. He's never actually been on the show before, but he is pretty much a professional podcaster.
I would say so.
I wouldn't go that far. No.
He's higher ranked than we are.
Yeah, right.
I have never been on the Snail Trail podcast, so.
But that is just changing at this moment.
Yes, it is. That is the voice of Jay from the Truck Show podcast, and also representing here today, Banks Power. So,
yes.
Yeah, man. Welcome to
Thanks
the show.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm excited to join your cast for an evening here. Oh, do they not know what time you guys record? Or do they know?
We record all over the place.
Okay. Typically, we record on a Tuesday during the day, but if some people have day jobs, then
it's weird that you guys were available at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night for me. That was strange, but I appreciate it. Waited till the way was in bed, and we're good to go here.
Yeah,
straight after those bars close. That's
Exactly.
when we do our recording.
No, I'm actually talking to you from my desk here at Banks in Azusa, California. So we're about 25 minutes east of Los Angeles in the foothills. For those of you that have ever watched the Rose Parade, we're about 5 minutes from where they have the Rose Parade. And actually, the Rose Parade floats are built at the end of this block in a building that's gorgeous, and it's amazing. And so that, to give you some perspective of where we are, I can be to the beach I live in Long Beach by the water, about 40 minutes southwest, and then right here are the foothills where it's currently snowing. So for those of you that don't live in sunny Southern California, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things we love about NorCal here too, is that we can go skiing in the morning, whitewater rafting in the afternoon, and go surfing in the evenings.
Have you done it? Have you actually?
I've done that once. Yep.
Yes. I think every like 16-year-old that gets their license, they have to do that, right?
Exactly.
They have to go surfing in the morning and then skiing in the afternoon.
Yep.
It's possible. Yeah. I don't think that's possible in many other states.
No, I don't think so either. Well, cool, man. Yeah. How's we were actually just down near you, and I didn't realize Banks Power was right there outside of LA and Long Beach and Azusa's. I guess we were just down there a couple weeks ago, but this show kind of came about. How did the connections get put together here?
I believe Banks and Pier 4x4 worked together for one of their base camps at one point.
Correct.
And then the dots got connected through Pier 4x4.
Oh, cool.
To get us connected here so we could have Banks on the podcast.
That's sweet.
Yeah, I was working with, we were up there promoting our new Pedal Monster throttle controller, and we outfitted a couple of trucks up there, and they said, wow, man, you guys should get this on some podcasts. I got a cool one up in NorCal that you need to talk to. This guy's Snail Trail, like they kill it. And they were just nonstop. I forget the dude's name. Forgive me. He's listening right now, and I apologize. And, yeah, brand new 23 Toyota, the SUV, not the Highlander, not a 4Runner. Yeah, the bigger one, Sequoia. He's got a brand new, 23 Sequoia. Yes,
those are nice.
And beautiful. And he was right next to the Banks tent up there in Big Bear, and he was hyping you guys like you're the cat's meow. So
I guess we owe him more money now.
I appreciate it. Yeah, he's big fan. And are you wearing a Stellar Built sweatshirt?
I am right now. Yeah.
So I was up at Stellar Build a couple months ago because I met those dudes. They are amazing. I met them in Big Bear at that same event.
Oh, cool.
And we brought up a Toyota Tacoma, and we outfit it with our iDash, which is our digital monitor, and our Pedal Monster throttle controller. And we just were giving rides to anyone that wanted to hop in. And the Stellar Build guys were there just standing around having a beer. And I threw them in there, and they were blown away. Flash forward, and they knew about Banks, and kind of we'll get into this a little bit, but they just kind of not blew me off as being a diesel guy. Like, what would you have for me, right? We're Toyota guys. Yep. And I said, that's our Tacoma, hop in. And we blazed around the dirt roads for a bit, and they were blown away. About 3-4 weeks later, I drove up to their spot in Sacramento, and we broed out. I went for a tour. I had them on my podcast. I'm sure you've had them on yours. And flash forward, they're Banks dealers, and they're killing it. Yeah. And I was impressed. They're amazing.
That's cool. Yeah, they're literally 5, maybe 7-minute drive from us here where we're recording right now. So
yeah, you're in a sketchy neighborhood though. Dude, like there was some homeless like hanging out at their spot. You know, I love the inside, but outside, you gotta pack heat.
Exactly. You got to make sure you're carrying that day.
They have a good alarm system.
I'm sure they do. They've got a lot of high dollar rigs inside.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Those guys are all good buddies. We go wheeling 2, 3, 4 times a year with them.
Okay.
So yeah, they're good dudes.
Their rigs are legit.
Yeah, they do some awesome work up there. They have the tracks are on the Tacoma right now. The track Tacoma. They're going to be going out this weekend to go play around and do some scouting for a special trip coming up here beginning of March. So.
I have a feeling their tracks will hold up a little better than Heavy D's on his Cybertruck, right?
Well, technically the tracks on the Cybertruck held up fine. It was the knuckles.
So it was his control arms folded and his knuckles broke and everything else. Yeah. That's for another podcast.
Yeah.
I thought that was amusing. That happened recently. I was up in Big Bear and at Holcomb Valley at this big ranch up there, and it was the Pure 4x4 base camp event, and we met, and and they hooked me up with you guys. And the reason I was excited is because most people, like I said, know Gail Banks, who is now in May going to turn 83. Wow. Who's, by the way, we're recording this at in the evening, and he's still here. He's here 7 days a week. He's 83. He still owns the company. This company has not been purchased by some investment banking we're not owned by an investment group. We're no Hoonigan Wheel Wheel Pros or any of those guys, right? Not that that's bad, but we're still owned by the same guy since 1958.
Wow.
And he is deeply invested. I mean, he's passionate about this company. And he spent his first 30 years in gas performance. In the local, he started very early on racing like Studebakers at the Bonneville Salt Flats and Mojave Desert, things like that. Twin turbo or supercharged Studebaker of all things, right? Because they were very slippery through the air and set some records with that. And then developed, paid his way through Cal Poly Pomona. You guys have, closer to you have Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which is where my son goes. Down here we have Cal Poly Pomona, and he wanted to be a draftsman and a mechanical engineer. And to put himself through school, he opened up a tiny little garage in a not great section of town and started upgrading vehicles. The first one he ever upgraded with, I think, was his mother's Model T. And yes, and he's got a great story about it. I don't want to butcher the story, but it was nothing that fancy. It was all naturally aspirated back then, for sure. And this would have been in the late 50s, early 60s. And so it was a classic already. It's not like they drove a Model T. He's not that, you know. So then he went in the local lakes around here, from Havasu to Castaic, or all the Southern California and then Arizona lakes. If you were a baller in the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, if you were like the Mac Daddy, you had a Gale Banks racing engine in your flat bottom racing boat. And that was all supercharged, or later into the late 70s, 80s, twin turbo. And so he was a supercharger. It was all gas back then. There was no diesel. And got really big in the boating. Then he went into offshore racing. There's some big races from here, from Southern California to Catalina, Channel Islands, like all these races. And then he got into offshore racing in Florida and was doing like go fast boats for the Coast Guard. And it was all turning into like, he was becoming the guy in the marine industry. Well, he was also still doing car stuff, and he had started twin turbocharging cars. And at one point in the early 80s, Pontiac reached out and they said, we'd like you to take our new Firebird / Trans Am and set a land speed record, go over 300 miles per hour in this car. We want to breathe a lot of life into it. And so they said, we've got a car for you. It's in New Mexico at our proving ground. Come down and get it, and we'll give you 2 support vehicles. So he drives down there with Bob Robe, one of the engineers at the time. And this company now is probably, I don't know how many employees they have, but it's, a couple dozen employees. They produce engines. They're doing aftermarket parts, things like that. Mainly engines. You'd buy a Gale Banks racing engine and drop it in your Corvette, in your Firebird or whatever at the time, or your Hot Rod, all that stuff. Studebaker, yeah. And he had won a lot of records at that point. So he was known. He was on the cover of Hot Rod magazine quite a bit back in those days. To the extent where people thought he was buying, time on the, buying space in these magazines, right? Because he was just a darling of the industry. And so he goes to New Mexico and he picks up this Firebird, and they give him 2 of GM. Sorry, you've got Pontiac, of course, owned by GM at that time, and Pontiac would team up with GMC. So you would buy a GMC. The GMC dealers and Pontiac dealers were the same, brother and sister, and they gave him a new Suburban and a new pickup truck, both with the brand new GM 6.2 liter naturally aspirated diesel engines.
Okay.
He drives, he tows the car back, and on the way back, he's pulling his hair out, hating life because they're so anemic. They're great engines, but they're just gutless, absolutely gutless. And he says, if we're going to be pulling this car back and forth to Bonneville up to Utah, I got to do something about this. So he pulls a turbo system, a Banks Sidewinder turbo system out of one of his marine engines. And he, over the course of about 4 or 5 Saturdays, he and Bob put this turbo system on this pickup truck GM 6.2 liter diesel engine. Flash forward, everyone in the boating community who was pulling boats with these diesel pickup trucks is talking about this turbo system more than they're talking about the boats or the engines,
boats and the
marine engines.
Wow.
Flash forward a couple of years, mid-'80s. It is the first diesel, the first upgrade. How can I say this? You could walk into any GMC dealer in the country and offer and option up a Gale Bank Sidewinder Turbo into your brand new GMC pickup or Suburban.
Wow.
It beat Cummins with their turbo diesel by a full year. So you could have a turbo diesel in your truck, in your GMC truck, a year before Cummins came out with their turbo diesel in the 5.9.
Okay.
So that exploded, and he could barely hold on to the reins. That turned the company. He went from being the high-performance gas guy to all of a sudden being the high-performance diesel guy.
Interesting.
And nobody else was in that space. He took, you guys have been to the SEMA show in Las Vegas? So Gale started going to the SEMA show when it was 1 year old.
Wow.
When it was under the grandstands at Dodger Stadium.
Wow.
The first one was in the grandstands under Dodger Stadium where you'd buy popcorn and hot dogs. That's where they held it.
Wow.
And so he, in the mid-'80s, he says, I've got these new diesel turbo systems, intercoolers, all this stuff. And he brings it to SEMA, and they basically laugh him out. That we don't want anything to do with that dirty diesel. Those are tractor engines. It'll never be popular. And so he went alone into the industry and was going shop to shop to shop, kind of like a vacuum, like an old school 1950s vacuum salesman, door to door, right? And he was knocking on doors, and he created almost single-handedly the diesel performance industry that we know today.
Wow.
Now, he was uncontested for 15 years, making intercoolers, turbo systems, boost tube systems, putting turbo systems on naturally aspirated 6.2, and then 6.5 later had the turbo system, but upgrading these turbo systems. Anyway, just created this industry. And then finally, a lot of other players, as you'd imagine, got into the space.
Yeah, they finally realized what
And
was
they
going
finally
on.
realized, they said, well, we can also transpose our technology from our gas applications onto our diesel applications. And there's only one guy's doing this. Let's go. The market's massive, right? And all the trucks were going diesel, and even cars were going diesel and all that stuff. So that's how Gale became who we know today as kind of the king of diesel. He fancies himself as the king of turbocharging or forced induction, supercharging, things like that. But if you're a young guy, if you're 30 or younger, you only know him as for diesel.
Yeah.
The old coots, the boomers and older, he was everything back then. He was fuel agnostic. If it burned, if it was hydrazine, methane, he didn't care.
Internal combustion, he's all over it.
Any internal combustion, he did not care. He was all about forced induction, and he was playing with ram air intakes before anyone was saying the phrase ram air intake, where you're forcing air in to the engine and get it using Mother Nature as your turbo system for naturally aspirated vehicles. He was intercooling naturally aspirated engines to win some of the races. Wow. Did you hear that? Naturally aspirated intercooling. What does that mean? He was at Bonneville. He would take a naturally aspirated car, hot rod, and the ram air coming through one of the headlight openings would travel through ice and then go into the carburetor.
Yeah.
Much denser air going into the carburetor, much higher horsepower. The colder, the denser the air, more horsepower you can make. Yeah. Anyway.
A bigger boom you can make, essentially. So.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so it turned into, flash forward, here we are today in 2024 with 1,700 or more products. We make stuff for all the major diesel pickup trucks on the road. And we fell into this gas market. He is... When I got here about 6 years ago, he was dabbling with some of the tuner cars, but the American tuner cars, the Camaro with the four cylinder, the Mustang with the 4-cylinder. He thought it would be neat to hop up some of the American tuner cars, to make them compete with the V8s. I didn't think that was a good idea, and I squashed those and said, no, let's focus on diesel. And the reason that I had him focus on diesel is that the company was kind of a lull that was created, kind of a, how do I say this? Back in 2010, there was an opportunity coming along for a defense contract. We knew that the Army wanted to retire the Humvee in combat. Still use it for troops and such for moving people around, but they wanted to kind of pull it out of combat.
Mm-hmm.
It had that original GM 6.2 liter diesel and later the 6.5 GM, and still does today, the 6.5. So they started floating that there's going to be this up-armored trophy truck we're going to build, and it's going to be called the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle, the JLTV. Google it and you'll see it. It's pretty impressive, the JLTV.
Okay.
Gale decides he wants to compete for that contract, and he wants to do it with a Duramax-based engine. That's the GM they'd find in a Silverado or a GMC Sierra.
Mm-hmm.
Go up to 2014, Gale wins the contract. This hot rodder from the San Gabriel Valley, came up around the same time as George Lucas, right? And I say that because, what's the movie where he shot at Modesto? American Graffiti.
Graffiti, yeah.
Am I
Down
too
the
old?
valley.
So yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Just obscure reference. So it's weird. It's amazing. This guy gets this contract, right? For this small, hot rodder is now got this contract that made the major defense contractors had typically, he beat out all the big names you'd know, major names like Cummins and Caterpillar, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Now, was this on for an engine contract? Or?
So this is an engine contract.
Okay.
It turns into the largest military engine contract of the decade.
Wow.
Today,
Good
we've
for
made
him.
just shy of 30,000 of these engines.
Wow.
All Joint Light Tactical Vehicles, JLTVs, have a Banks D866T. That's D for defense, 8-cylinder, 6.6 liter turbocharged engine in them. They start their life at Duramax in Moraine, Ohio, at the Duramax plant. So you'll have a couple thousand Silverado engines and then a few hundred Banks engines and then more Silverado engines. And our parts go onto those engines at the assembly line.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
But then they can't tool. Not all of our parts fit their tooling. So those engines end up coming off the line and coming here to Azusa, California, where we do final assembly and then test. Every single engine gets a 22-minute dyno test, and they get signed off by the engineer and gets shipped to Oshkosh in Wisconsin and gets dropped into the JLTV.
Wow.
So all JLTVs have Banks D866T engines in them.
Wow.
And it's a point of pride for us. It's really, really cool. So in that time when he was fighting for that contract, he started to make a fewer parts because he was focused on those. So the aftermarket didn't get as much attention as it deserved. And I was working at a radio station in LA building show cars and trucks just as a goof on the side. I was producing a morning radio show for K-Rock in LA, KROQ. I built a big lifted dually, an LMM, a 2008 truck, bought it used, and I called it the Rock Crusher, ROQ for KROQ, Rock Crusher. Okay. And I wanted to take it to Monster Jam and Supercross and all that stuff. Because you guys, if you've ever been to, I know radio's not popular today, but in the 90s and 2000s, radio was huge. Mm-hmm. And if you went to the grand opening of a Target or a 7-Eleven or a gas station, there'd be the radio station outside in a 10 by 10, easy up tent, giving away t-shirts, right? Yep. And I thought it was lame. It was always a Chevy or a Ford van with a big logo on the side. It was always the same freaking van.
Did and it ever say free candy on the side?
No, it didn't. It was, right? It should. It should. Although I'm sure some of the morning shows thought that might have been funny to do, but so I said, let's build a truck that's appropriate for Southern California. Massive 37-inch off-road tires, a big dually, logoed on the side, roof rack, the whole thing. And I did that. And in the process of building that truck for the radio station is how I met Gale Banks.
Nice.
So I came here and I wanted to focus him back on diesel, not do those tuner cars or any of that stuff. So that was 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And in those 6 years, we have put the crown back on him and sat him in the throne. And he is now once again the king of diesel like no other. And I'm very proud of that achievement. Like he is the authority in diesel.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's great.
Every time I've heard of Banks, it's definitely in the realm of diesel.
Right.
I didn't realize that you guys even had stuff for gas vehicles and gas engines until we started talking. I think it was early last week or something. I was like, wait a minute, you guys got stuff for Tacomas and 4Runners and all this other stuff? And you're like, yeah.
So we do have, when they launched the Titan, of course, with the diesel, right? The Cummins diesel, we were early on that. That made sense, right? It was kind of a interesting crossover vehicle. A truck that had been known for gas was going diesel, et cetera. So that was a no-brainer. But then that kind of dovetailed into some of the other Titans, the Frontiers, Tacomas, Tundras, and we were doing exhaust pipes. If I take my camera, you're not watching video, but if I take my camera and I point it across the street over there, oh, you're looking at glass.
Yeah.
We have our tube shop right across the street. So we have 13 buildings, and we basically take up a city block. And we do our own tube bending all the way from headers. We do the welding here all the way up to 5-inch diesel exhaust. They're 5 inches is what you buy these days. It's huge. Nothing, much bigger than you'd find on your Tacoma or Tundra.
Yeah.
Anyway, we started making exhaust pipes, intakes, headers for various vehicles, including a lot of the imports. And we still do today. They don't get as much notoriety. We got really big into the Jeep thing. Jeeps exploded for us in the early 2000s when we released a Sidewinder turbo system for the JK.
Oh, okay.
That was huge, but it was a difficult kit in that the tuning was hard, and we eventually obsoleted it a few years later. But that kit was so important to getting us into the Jeep market and the gas market. It was exploding. We had off-road events in the local mountains here, things like that. It was really, really good for us. But what kind of brings me to you guys today is the pedal monster, which is the throttle controller, and the iDash.
Yep.
So you guys that are listening, you have whatever truck you drive, it's probably gas, right? I know you have some diesel owners, but that's probably the minority of your listeners. I think the only things that are marketed to, the only instruments marketed to Tacoma owners, Tundra owners, Frontier owners, Titan owners are like scan gauge for instrumentation, maybe some cheap Amazon dongles that you can look at over your phone, right? They pair to your phone.
Yeah, they pull
on
up
the monitoring side.
Torque.
Torque. That's a popular app.
Yep.
Exactly. And someone bought Torque. I forget. One of our competitors bought Torque not a couple years back. Yeah. And or on the throttle controller side, you've got this guy, which I'm holding up to the camera. You guys can't see. That is a pedal commander, of which I have dozens of. Now that's our competitor. And I want to talk a little bit. Are you guys cool if I bust into this and do a little sales pitchery?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is what we kind of wanted to get down to, and we're really hoping that you would do a comparison side by side with Pedal Commander, because that is what's known in the Tacoma and 4Runner world as pedal commanders. And so you've explained a little bit about the details of the pedal monsters. I think the listeners out there want to hear what is the difference between what you guys are doing and what Pedal Commander has been doing.
Rather than sound like a schlocky salesman, I'm going to tell you exactly how it went down.
Okay, cool.
So I'm the marketing guy. My title is brand manager. And one of my jobs is to be on social media. And I'm on social media all day, every day. I'm on Ram groups, Ford groups, Jeep groups, you name it, I'm all over it. Duramax groups. I think I'm in 120 plus groups.
Wow. Jeez.
It sucks. And I'm not like, it sucks balls. It's awful. As far as like being that, because I'm constantly, now that so many people know who I am, they're always tagging me into conversations and threads. But flashback about 3 years or so, I was seeing a lot of guys complain about pedal lag, throttle lag, turbo lag. It's all the same thing. They were calling it 10 different things, but it was all the same issue with the diesel trucks, specifically the Duramax guys. You guys who drive diesel, you know what I'm talking about. You mash the pedal, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. And then finally the turbo spools up, you get boost, and it feels like a 2-stroke dirt bike. Like it finally gets on the pipe. Wow, 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 wow.
Yeah.
But it takes a while to get there. And that consumer group had found Pedal Commander. Pedal Commander had been around for a couple of years, but not really able to find their footing. There have been throttle controllers, throttle manipulators, throttle boosters, whatever you want to call it, by a dozen different brands since the beginning of EFI. Since we had drive-by-wire, throttle by wire, someone said, I want to give you control over that. It shouldn't just be whatever the ECM determines how much you're pushing down the pedal is how much I'm going over the butterfly. It's not a direct relationship between the pedal and the butterfly, at the carburetor or the injectors. So guys start talking about pedal commander. This is really solving the issue, guys. Pedal commander, and I'm seeing it all the time. And I thought, this is interesting. I go to the SEMA show. They debut their booth at the SEMA show. I forget what year this is. Maybe this is more like 4 or 5 years ago. And it was a big deal. I see Pedal Commander. They must really be stepping up because the booth, it's the SEMA show in Las Vegas. This industry show ain't cheap. No, something's up. They're making money. Yep. And I go, well, look, we have more than 20 engineers. Oh, it's more than that. It's probably closer to 24 engineers, mechanical and electrical engineers. And we have the bandwidth, or we have the staff to do it, to build one of our own, but we don't really have the bandwidth. So I called up the guys at Pedal Commander. They're about 40 minutes north of me, north of Los Angeles. Okay. And I said, hey, I don't know if my boss will go for this, but would you white label your throttle controller to us? Could we put a Banks logo on it? And we don't do this. This would be the first time we've done this. But you're so far out ahead on this market. Like, you guys are now the 500-pound gorilla. Yeah. Why don't we just team up? I'll buy yours, or I'll make a new box. I'll make a new plastic housing, put your guts, your circuitry in our box, and we'll just be, within 6 weeks, we'll be to market, or whatever. 6 months, I'll be to market. I don't have to do any R&D. You're already there. And they said, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. The wholesale guy was all about it. He's like, yeah, I get to sell a couple of thousand units a year extra, and all I have to do is sell to these guys at cost and let them put it in their own box. They thought it was a no-brainer. So I said, okay. I tell Gail, owns a company, and he says, okay, I'll consider this. This is, you're bringing this to the table. Let's talk about this. I want to learn more about this technology. What do these guys do? How are they manipulating the throttle, the pedal? Are there safety systems? He's asking all these questions, to which I have very few answers, right? He says, Jay, go out and buy every throttle controller you could buy. Find them all. So I bought, at that time, it was like 11, I think. There's many more now. But at that time, there was 11 that I could find. Now they're all on everyone's Instagram feed, on everyone's Facebook feed. There's iDrive and this and that. And there's Chinese ones. They're everywhere, right? We all see them. So I buy these, and I'm at a taco shop with a vendor, and it's like a Tuesday or something at lunchtime. And Gail's blowing up my cell phone. And he goes, when you get back here, I got something to show you. And those Pedal Commander guys, don't talk to them anymore. If you want to build your own, we're doing ourselves. And he hangs up. Wow. I go, wait, what? What just happened? What?
Something happened.
So I come back to North Engineering, which is electrical engineering for us. And Doug Anderson, he runs our electrical engineering team. He has all of the throttle controllers that I purchased opened like clamshells. And some he had to cut open with a Dremel tool, because some of them, they seal shut so you can't actually see the guts inside. But he spent time and he opened every single one. And he had a combination of magnifying glasses, all these different instruments that could show us the circuitry in these units. Okay. He says, look at all these. What do all these things have in common? Of course, I don't know the answer. And Gail says, none of these have any relays or safety circuitry. If any of these boxes right here fail, they can fail to dead pedal, zero pedal, or they can fail to full throttle, 100% pedal.
Jeez.
Dang.
And I said, wait a minute. Didn't Toyota pay out $500 million to the Prius unintended acceleration lawsuit or whatever that was back 10 years ago or something? I said, that's a no-go. Yeah. And I went through, I spent another 45 minutes with Doug, and he took me through every box. And none of them had any relays on. None of them had any way of bypassing their own circuitry if there was an irregularity in the current through the unit, or if there was an internal failure or an external failure. They couldn't be bypassed. Wow. All of our tuners for all of our diesel trucks back to the early 90s had bypasses in them. If something went haywire, it's just like we've all wired up a a light bar, right? LEDs, you got some rigids on your truck or whatever. You put it through a Bosch 30 amp relay under the hood,
Yeah.
right? You run everything through a relay or you melt all the wiring. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, imagine one the size, of an eraser on a pencil. That's what we're talking about. A very small, magnetically normally closed relay. So in the event that something happens, it snaps shut on its own. Okay. All of our devices have that. None of these had it. It was at that moment that he greenlit the idea. He says, if you want to do this, Jay, we're going to have to do it ourselves. I will say that he was a little skeptical that he thought these were snake oil a little bit.
Okay.
He thought that pedal boosters were snake oil. He says, I don't understand why guys are spending a couple $100 when I can do the same thing with my right foot.
Sure.
And a lot of guys say this, right? A lot of hot rodders today, well, young guys, old guys, they say the same thing. I don't understand why you would spend this money when I can just push down the pedal.
Okay.
And Gail said the same thing.
Well, hold on. Just stop. I want to stop right there really quick because I'm going to explain that concept because I'm not sure if everybody out there understands what throttle controllers are actually doing. So when you're drive by wire, you have an electrical signal that's being manipulated by the throttle pedal, right? And that electrical signal goes into your ECM. Your ECM decides to do something with that electrical signal, and hopefully it's deciding to increase the throttle input on the engine with that. Am I correct in that thinking so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've got a great analogy.
Yeah, go for it.
Most of us have a volume control on our Toyota stereo. Maybe some of you have buttons that go up and down. If not, maybe think of an old school home stereo with a giant 3-inch wide knob.
Yeah.
Okay. Every volume control you've ever put your fingers on is a 0 to 5 volt sensor.
Okay.
0 is off. 5 volts is max volume. Your pedal is identical. It is a 0 to 5 volt potentiometer.
Okay.
0 is no pedal. 5 volts. Max pedal.
And
it's actually
pretty linear going
it's half a volt to 4.5 volts, but let's call it 1 or 0 to 5.
Yeah.
You just used a key term.
Okay.
What'd you say?
I said,
Linear.
Is it linear from 0 to 5 as you're cranking it up?
Bingo.
Kind of thing?
And that's the awesome sauce right there.
Okay.
So if I had an old school naturally aspirated vehicle, I push down the pedal. It's got an actual steel cable. A woven steel cable, like a bicycle brake cable that goes through the firewall and to the butterfly valve on the carburetor, and it opens and closes. It's 1-to-1. If I push down the pedal, it's the butterfly valve is opening a commensurate amount to the pedal being depressed.
Okay. Yep.
Like you said, with a 0 to 5 volt sensor, it's the ECM's job to interpret that voltage, 0 volts or 5 volts, and then what does it do with it before it passes it along and makes its commands of the butterfly valve in your intake system, right? So 50% throttle on your Tacoma may only be 30% open on the butterfly valve under the hood.
Okay.
Oh.
And they do this at they program the ECM this way for fuel economy reasons or emissions reasons.
Okay.
They know that you as the driver, me as the driver, we're going to spend 90% of our day driving in the first third to about the half pedal range with our foot being depressed, right?
Okay.
And so they soften it in that range. 0 pedal is always 0, and 100% throttle all the way to the floor is still 100%.
Okay.
But where do what happens in between?
Yeah.
So picture this graph. You've all seen an XY chart, right? X along the bottom, Y along the top, the vertical, horizontal and vertical graph. The bottom left-hand corner of the graph is 0 pedal and 0 throttle.
Okay.
The top right-hand corner of this graph is 100% pedal all the way to the floor and 100% pedal and 100% throttle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you following me?
Yep.
Now you're drawing a line now diagonally from 0 pedal all the way up to the right to 100%. That would be a cable actuated throttle. It's it's linear, just like you said. Imagine I reach up and I take that line that I just drew from the bottom left-hand corner to the top right-hand corner, and I pulled it down and I bowed it in the middle.
Downwards.
And I softened it up downwards.
Okay.
I've made it I've bowed it down like a guitar string, right? I'm pulling it down so it's softer in the middle. 0 is still 0 because my line is still connected to the 0, 0 on the bottom left-hand corner. I'm still connected to the top right-hand corner at 100% pedal and 100% throttle. But I've pulled that cable, that string down, that line down in the middle, and I've made it look like a bell curve, right? Or an upside down bell curve.
Right.
So essentially
Do you follow me?
Yeah. So essentially for people who can't vision that in their heads, it'd be like you're putting the pedal down 50% of the way, but you're only getting 20% throttle on the butterfly valve at your throttle body to make the engine go, the go juice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, once you get into maybe 70, 80, 90%, it's now catching up because you're ramping up that curve.
You still got to catch up to the 100.
That's exactly right. Because remember, all vehicles are rated at 100%. So when you see, whether it's flywheel horsepower or at the wheels, that's rated at 100% throttle, wide open throttle, pedal to the metal. To the wood, as Gail would say, because they had wooden floors way back in the day. He'd be like, to the wood. I'm like, what wood are you talking about?
The Model T.
The pedal to the wood. Exactly, right? I'm like, they're not wood, bro. So, and I call Gail bro. It's funny. He thinks it's comedy. So then your goal is to make that more linear. And how you do that is by intercepting that 0 to 5 volt signal between the pedal and the ECM. And then you tell the pedal where in its range of motion do you want 50% throttle?
Okay.
Do you want it at only 20% of your foot being pushed down? Or do you want, you can put it anywhere. That's what our device does. So you can make it linear. So it's that straight line, just like we talked about.
Okay.
1-to-1, or you can make it really aggressive. You can make it so you're just touching the pedal and you're getting, you push it down 20%, you're getting 70% throttle opening.
Like a launch control.
It can be. So that is what a throttle controller does. Now I will say that all of our competitors, good or bad, they all do that. The difference of what we do is that if you go to Pedal Commander's website, go to Sprint Booster's website, go to iDrive's website, they all have a graph of their, what they call curves. And they call them curves, throttle curves. But what does a curve mean to you? That's a bent line, correct? Should be, your mind pictures a smoothly bent line, something with a nice arch to it, right?
Yeah.
So, not so with Pedal Commander, Sprint Booster, iDrive, all the others. It is a line that goes straight up and dog legs over, hard, like a triangle. So they are not smooth curves. And the reason they do that is they don't have the processing power to have all these hundreds of dots all along this curve. Like you'd just think of like a really low res graphics card, right? Like an 8-bit. It's a circle is not really a circle. A circle is made of
25
pieces,
dots,
right? But then get a really high res monitor. Now you have 1 million dots and it looks beautifully smooth. That's what we've done. We've got an elegantly curved response on all of our 30 settings.
Yeah, you guys are able to essentially program in more data points for each setting,
Bingo.
whereas the competitors are all programming one data point per setting, and that's what the throttle is responding to. Whereas you guys are like, no, fuck one, let's do 10,000 data points.
No, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we've done. So now we've spent weeks and we have all the throttle curves beautiful like we like them. They're just, and I think Tacoma owners who use Pedal Commanders, they've just accepted the fact that their transmission gets really shift happy. I know that there's some guys who are like, no, get OTT tune, bro, get OTT tune or whatever. Yes, you can if you go into the ECM, you can retune and change your torque management and the shift points and all that stuff. This is for that's for the hardcore guy who's not afraid of voiding his warranty. For all the rest of us, for the majority of the audience who want a plug and play device that can be removed and cannot be detected after the fact, cannot be detected by any factory scan tool that it was ever there. This is the option.
Yeah.
So we've got the throttle control contours where they're beautifully smooth and they don't mess with the transmission like the pedal commander. Pedal commander, if you're going up to the mountains, you know it's like shifting back, up, down, up, down, up, down. And why is it shifting so aggressively? Why can it not? Why is the problem of the Tacoma shift happiness? Why is it exacerbated by the pedal commander, our competitor?
Is it because
that's because
the line is so aggressive at the start? And so it's acting like you're pushing the pedal really far down. So it wants to shift you down to like third gear quickly to catch up with where the pedal would be?
A little bit.
Okay.
Remember how I talked about that beautifully smooth curve that we engineered?
Yes.
Then picture a straight line up and then over for pedal commander. Imagine that your pedal is physically on that edge. Where you are commanding a lot of extra, you're commanding a lot of extra throttle, but then you're right over that edge, and and then there's nothing. This is something I can show you with a graph.
Right,
it's difficult to explain verbally.
Yeah.
It's right at the apex.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. I'm going to steal that. It's right at the apex. But remember, your transmission is making its shifts based on commanded torque. That's how it decides when to shift.
Yeah.
If your commanded torque is acting like a light switch, not a beautiful dimmer switch like we are. We're a beautiful dimmer switch.
Yeah.
You can infinitely dim that light bulb in your house. Pedal commander is a light switch at that apex. So your transmission's like, am I at the low end of the apex? Am I before the apex? Am I after the apex? Am I before the apex? Am I after the apex? Where am I? So the problem gets a lot worse. And that's why pedal commander guys, they don't know. They just assume like this is, well, I want the sensitivity, but I'm going to have to live with the shift happiness. You don't have to live with the shift happiness because in our device, that doesn't occur.
Wow. Okay. That's
so
cool.
then we talk about that stuff. Now, the other big issue that we found as soon as we started researching pedal commander and the other guys more deeply, pedal commander specifically, because again, Sprint Boost are really big in the UK and big here, but not like pedal commander. They just, I think it's partly that they look like a little Rockstar energy drink can and it's cool looking and it's beat on your dashboard. There's some aesthetics that go with it too. I give them some credit for that. If you go on YouTube and you look for pedal commander fails, you'll find an abundance. And we said, why are guys having dead pedal in the middle of the highway? And I'm not joking. You can go on YouTube and find it for yourself. Why are guys having all sorts of really bizarre issues where their dashboard is lighting up, their their engine lights coming on, and all these things are going haywire? That's because the pedal commander module, I want to show you the difference here. As I'm going to talk you guys through it at home or in your car or in your truck while you're listening. So this is a pedal commander I'm taking out of its box right now. And I'm going to show you the intercept. Okay. I'm going to show it to the camera here. Here's the module, right? About the size of a deck of cards. And then on the other end, you got a cable and you have two connections, right? You have a male and a female, and that's what intercepts your pedal.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
Where does this module get the power to run itself?
From 5 volts from the pedal?
Interesting. Yes, that's correct. It sure does. And that pedal, its power comes from your ECM. And your ECM allocates only a certain amount of current for every sensor in the vehicle that it's driving. Okay.
Got it.
In most vehicles, you only have about 10 to 20 milliamps of overhead beyond what the pedal is drawing itself. Because remember, the pedal is that volume control on your stereo, right? It takes some current to run that circuit. Here comes pedal commander, and they draw that circuit down more. And in many vehicles, that can be too much. And the ECM under the hood says, there's an issue with there's a short in the circuit, and it turns the pedal off. It deactivates the pedal and it lights up your dashboard like a Christmas tree.
Wow.
So how do we solve that? Where do we get our power?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. About 18 inches over from the pedal to your left is the OBD plug.
Yep.
And it has a fused 15 amp circuit to the battery. Why don't we just tap into that?
Yeah.
So here comes everything else we make is OBD enabled. So let's do that too.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. There's data on the OBD bus.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of shit you can get access to.
And there's another issue with pedal commander is that guys back through their garage doors and they run over bicycles because it's just as jerky backwards as it is forwards.
Oh,
It doesn't know. This doesn't know anything about the vehicle.
Yeah.
We just, I don't want to spoil the video, but we just connected one of these to Gail's John Deere riding lawnmower on his ranch in Yosemite. I'm not joking. Like, it doesn't have any idea what it's connected to.
Wow.
No clue. All it knows is connected to a 0 to 5 volt sensor.
yeah.
You could probably connect it to a volume control on a stereo. I don't know.
It was
But
funny.
so
We were actually kind of discussing this before, trying to figure out, just Jimmy and I talking, how Throttle, how these things worked. And I was like, well, in theory, it's just taking an electrical signal and amplifying it, right? So could you take a brake controller and just hook up a brake controller and amplify it using a brake controller? But that's essentially what you're saying Pedal Commander is doing.
So
A little more sophisticated than that. But
it is more sophisticated. And it's, so when I say it's 0 to 5 volts,
yeah.
there's multiple signals. One's rising, one's falling. There's checks and balances. The so by law, they have to have a rising and a falling to check, right?
Okay.
But other pedals have 4. They're actually even, I believe I was told that there's some with 6. So there's checks. So if one signal fails, there's a backup. It's one of the most important things in your car: the pedal, the brake, the gas, and the steering. Right? Who cares what who cares what your stereo is doing? As long as you can brake, go, navigate your vehicle. Those things all have redundancies, right?
Uh-huh.
So now we're on OBD. Pedal Monster, the Banks Pedal Monster is on OBD. All we need to know is gear position: drive, neutral, park, reverse. So when we sense that you're in reverse, we seamlessly return you to stock pedal response when backing up. So you've got your good old sluggish pedal going backwards. The moment you shift back into drive and go forwards, you're now at Sport 8, Track 2, City 4, whatever you were before you went into reverse, you're back to that. And you say, well, that's pretty cool. That's a great safety feature. And it is, right? There's more. Let's say that you really
there's
love.
more.
Wait, there's more. I'm the ShamWow guy. But wait, there's more.
Yeah. Ron
I can
Popeil.
squeeze more out of this rag, right?
Yeah.
I know that sounds super cheesy. Sorry. So, like, what more can we do with this? Another thing that guys were talking about is that they wanted to leave it in like Sport 2, like a medium setting, but they didn't like the fact that when they were leaving a green light or a stop sign, it was a little too aggressive. And we go, whoa, we can sense the speed. So we're going to give you what's called speed trim, and you can tell Pedal Monster how much sensitivity to add below 10 miles per hour. So a lot of guys will put speed trim onto the high setting and then leave it in like Sport 9. Because again, we have City 1 through 10, Sport 1 through 10, and Track 1 through 10. Okay. This allows you to have very little sensitivity, or I should say very little added sensitivity below 10 miles per hour. And as you exceed 10 miles per hour, we roll in that sensitivity smoothly and take it to about like 20 to 24 miles an hour. And then you have that full sensitivity back. So highway speeds, city streets, all that. It's beautifully smooth. And you're not being jerked around. And if you pull like a trailer, travel trailer, you're not knocking the dishes out of out of the drawers and stuff. And so
you said that the Pedal Monster has, you have City, Sport, and Track, and then you have 10 levels of each within there.
Correct.
I don't recall any of the other competitors having multiple variations. Is that a thing, or did I miss it?
Pedal Commander does.
Okay.
So yeah. So Pedal Commander does have, I think, an equivalent of somewhere around 25 to 30 levels.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. So we weren't like reinventing the wheel there. I will say that for everyone who has had a Pedal Commander and has switched over to a Pedal Monster, a Banks Pedal Monster, the first thing is, wow, the response is a lot smoother. Like I thought it wouldn't be, because how could it be? The devices sound so similar on their face, but they say, no, it is the vehicle responds to my input more smoothly. And that's not me. I encourage you guys to try one and if it's BS, Jay, like it's horseshit, like but you won't say that. We've sold thousands of them, and I've never had anyone say that it didn't do what we said it was going to do. trying to think of other features, but like those are some of the big buckets that we've checked all those boxes. We checked all the safety boxes. If you reach up, we did a video where we disconnected the power on a pedal commander and the whole dashboard goes ape. It just goes completely bonkers. StabiliTrak goes nuts. Your parking brake goes nuts. Like everything on the dashboard's lit up. And it's a service, take to dealer, the whole thing. If you disconnect the power from our device, Pedal Monster, again, normally closed relay, snap shut, you keep driving seamlessly with a stock pedal.
That's huge in and of
you just
itself.
Keep cruising.
That's
that's an extreme safety factor right there, right? It's
right.
You don't know what the competitors are going to do. You don't know if you're going to have a dead pedal or 100% throttle pedal. And with the Pedal Monster, it automatically goes back to stock from whatever setting you were at.
I want to throw one more thing out there.
Okay.
Since we're on the topic. Another thing that these guys tout is valet mode, or where they deaden the pedal. So let's say you have
take off with it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say you have a Corvette, you got a Hellcat something, you have the TRX or whatever, right? And you want to hand it over to the valet and you want to deaden the pedal, or you want to have your daughter drive it, something like that, right? And so they have a valet mode or a sluggish mode or an econo mode. They're called the same thing, but what it does is so if you push down 50% of the throttle, it only gives you 20%, right? What happens if that fails and you're at 50% throttle and it was only giving you 20% commanded power?
Would it go to 0 or 100%? I mean, is that still the fail states?
Let me give you a more dramatic example.
Okay.
I mash the pedal. I'm the valet guy. You own a Hellcat. You put it in valet mode, which basically reduces by 50%, makes it really sluggish.
Okay.
You hand me the keys, you go inside, you get your fancy dancy dinner, and I go hot rod your vehicle around and I mash the pedal. I'm at 100% pedal. It's only giving me 50% though. What happens when my pedal commander freaks out and dies? You now go to 100% throttle.
Oh, yeah.
You accelerate and you rear end whatever is in front of you. We decided not to do that. So a lot of guys will say, Banks, why didn't you put in valet mode, or why didn't you put in rock crawling mode so I can go slower? I said, if the device shuts off, let's say that our device shut off. Let's say it didn't fail. Let's say that we bypassed ourselves safely. You were matted. You were to the wood, as Gail would say, right? Pedal to the floor.
Pedal to the wood.
Pedal to the floor, but only getting 50% of what you were commanding. And all of a sudden the device turns off. You go to 100% torque.
Yeah.
Commanded torque.
Immediately.
Boom. You go off the cliff. You hit whatever's in front of you. So I wanted to address that because some people say, well, I really like that valet feature. I go, what's dangerous? And our lawyer said no.
Yeah.
Like literally we said, they're like, no, you don't include that feature. That's stupid. Like that is a huge lawsuit waiting to happen. Yeah. So we didn't.
And if you think about it, I mean, anything that creates an inconsistent driving experience, whether it's intentional or especially if it's unintentional, you can end up with some big issues, some serious issues with cars not driving the way you think that they should be driving. And so if you're a valet parker who is unfamiliar with the car in the first place, it's not your car, and all of a sudden, something freaks out and has an issue, then you're probably going to wreck it, if not hurt somebody. And same thing, I mean, even off-roading. So the Ford Broncos, they have a thing that will kind of deaden the pedal for rock crawling mode kind of thing. It takes away some of the horsepower and torque input. And I'm guessing it's doing exactly what you're saying. For 100% throttle input on the pedal, you're only getting 20% go juice on the engine. I hate it because I have to now consider the change of how the pedal is behaving while I'm trying to drive it. It's an inconsistent driving. So that actually, like, when you explain it that way, it makes a lot of sense to not have those in there.
We wanted this to feel predictable every single time you use it. And the next question guys have, because you have a lot of, I'm sure guys who are listening, gals who are listening are driving everything, but I know you guys have a lot of Toyota fans. And OTT, what is it? Overland Turner Tuning. And there's some others, right?
Yes.
There a lot of people tune their trucks, and they said, I don't need yours because I have my truck tuned. I said, wait a minute. With your tune, that's a fixed ECM calibration. a guy hooked his laptop to it, or he had a handheld device and he plugged into the OBD port and he reflashed your ECM. And now you have that tune. It's great. Perfect. But you can't do anything about it when you're in the mountains. It is what it is. Okay. Pedal Commander layers on top of that beautifully. Whether you drive a diesel, a Tacoma, a Tundra, a Jeep, diesel, Jeep, gas, doesn't matter. It layers on top. And what's beautiful, you can either use the mobile app to make those adjustments while you're driving. You just take your foot off the gas, go up, 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 and put your foot right back on the gas again. You don't have to pull over and stop like you do with our competitors.
That's a nice feature.
Or you control it using the iDash.
Oh.
And if you guys want in the iDash, we can get in the iDash. Yeah. And the iDash is great.
Yeah, I was actually curious and wanted you to explain how do people control the pedal monster? Because I think on the competitors, the buttons are on the device, but they're not on yours. So yeah, let's, so there's an app and then there's the iDash.
Yeah, exactly. And many of our devices are tuners. They're stealthy. You hide them under your dash. You hide them under your, our tuner for like the diesel pickup trucks is called the Derringer, which is like the old hideout gun, right? The Derringer was that little tiny gun that you'd see in old Westerns. They would put it in their boot. That's where you'd put your Derringer in your boot. Okay.
I always called the Derringer the seat behind the driver. Because there's shotgun to your side, right? And we called pistol on the back, and we called the Derringer because there's never any room back there, right?
That's true. It's the tiny seat.
Tiny.
Yeah, that's the Derringer seat.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Most of our devices are small, and this was no different. So when we made the pedal monster, we thought this would go under your dash and it would be hideout, right? And it would be out of sight, out of mind. So you don't have to physically remove it. If you go to the dealer, depending on your dealership, you can physically remove it. And I mean, I think you probably take it out in 30 seconds. The hardest part is just cutting the zip ties that you've wire tied it up with, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But we didn't feel that there was a need to plaster it on your dashboard because look, a lot of you guys, let's say you order a brand new 24 Tacoma, the last thing you want is a module on that beautiful dashboard. Or you've got, a brand new Titan or Tundra, whatever it is, like the interiors aren't junky anymore. So you don't need a module plastered on it's clearly an aftermarket device, Velcroed to your dashboard. So we said, let's make it stealthy and put it up. Well, how do you control it? Well, the answer is your mobile app, which is super easy. You don't have to use your mobile app you only have to use it when you want to change the setting. If you're happy in City 4 all day, every day, throw your phone in the ocean. It's irrelevant. It will remain in City 4 forever until you change it. So that's kind of neat. But then we also make, and we've had what predates the pedal monster is our iDash, IDASH, iDash. And Apple is super bummed that we got iDash before they got it. I'm not even joking.
That's awesome.
And so what this is, it's a 52 millimeter round gauge, which means it fits in any gauge hole you've ever had. And it will display up to 8 parameters on each of its 5 customizable screens. So that's 40 parameters. And you just hold down a button and it flips to page 2, flips to page 3, 4, 5, etc.
God damn it. So I have an iDash right now, and I didn't realize there was multiple pages you can set these different parameters up on.
Sure do. Okay. So the back button, which is the lower right-hand corner, hold that down for 3 seconds, and it's going to blow your mind.
All right.
Now, each page is 100% customizable. You can change the layout, the colors, everything about it. By default, it comes with an 8 gauge layout. So there are these little 8 squares, right? With just numbers. It'll show, boost, oil temp, coolant, whatever you want.
It'll show any number that the OBD2 is putting out pretty much.
And then some.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
It will show stuff that it's not showing because we do calculated parameters. So then you can change it to like a 7 gauge, a 2 gauge. If you want the numbers big, choose a 2 gauge. And as you reduce the number of numerals displayed on the screen, they get physically larger. So if you're blind like I am, you choose like a 3 gauge layout or whatever. And it's all in the settings. They're so fast. And it's all solid state. So you're not waiting to boot and change pages. When you push a button, it does what you want it to do instantly. Not like there's some of our competitors in the diesel space. Not much in the gas space, but in the diesel, there's some other monitors and they're really sluggish to load. So this gauge will plug into any OBD port. It doesn't care what the vehicle is. If it's 2008 or newer, it will have it will display more, and that is because in 2008,
Weren't they required?
CAN bus was standardized.
Okay.
So think of it like pre-2008, if you plugged into a Toyota or a Nissan or a BMW or Mercedes or a Subaru, they all spoke different languages.
Okay.
And if you knew that language, you could program it into your diagnostic device, your Snap-on scan tool, whatever you had. You could program all that stuff in, and it would display it. But that was a ton of programming on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And really, when it came down to it, what was going to be easiest for smog techs?
Yeah.
When you go to get your smog, your truck smogged, your Jeep smogged, the guy needs to plug in and he needs to see air fuel ratio, speed, blah, blah, blah. He needs to see what they call mode 1 parameters. Mode 1, every vehicle 2008 or newer will broadcast mode 1. It's not that many. It's 18 or 20 parameters. It's the basics that the smog guy needs.
Yeah.
Okay. Then there's all the other stuff that the ECM broadcasts, but you have to know what you're looking for. It's in hexadecimal, basically, right? You have to sniff and find out. Like if you want to know what the left turn signal is, we hook up our laptop to it. We turn on the left turn signal and we watch the data go up and down and up and down. And then we map it basically, and we reverse engineer all those PIDs. And every aftermarket company does it the same way. You find the vehicle of choice. I'm going to get a brand new 24 Tacoma in here, and we're going to do the same thing. First, I'm going to look for a reverse safety for the pedal monster, make sure I can see reverse gear. And then I'm going to look for everything else. Trans temp, I'm going to look for all that stuff. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes they broadcast it. They don't hide it. Sometimes they're Volkswagen, and Volkswagen has the most PIDs of anyone and hides the most.
Yeah.
So like if you're Cobb Tuning, who we don't really compete with Cobb, and they're friendly, they specialize in Volkswagen and Subaru and some other Ford product, and they have all the PIDs. They know everything that sucker's broadcasting, right?
Mm-hmm.
They specialize like we do with Duramax, Ram, Jeep, and some others. Mm-hmm. We spent weeks reverse engineering and sniffing out, as we call it, all of those parameters, those PIDs. And it's a parameter ID. Mm-hmm. So we can display all that stuff on this iDash, and we can do it in real time. Then we can set up alerts. So let's say you wanted to know what the highest oil pressure you got was. There's alerts and mins and maxes. I don't want to confuse anyone. I'll start with alerts. You could set something very easy like speed alert. Mm-hmm. I know that there's cops always on this road. I want a big amber box to flash on my iDash when I cross 82 miles an hour, because that's where all the local cops get everyone. It's 82 and above. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can do that. You can set any parameter you want, whether you're looking at it on the screen or not, for a high or low alert. It's up to you. Anything.
I didn't know that
then
either.
we have mins and maxes, minimums and maximums. And what a minimum or maximum will do, think of it like a high score on an arcade game, where you come into the pizza parlor and the dude before you had just hit 8 million points. Mm-hmm. It records that 8 million until you break 8,000,001.
Okay.
Right. So then the next kid comes and gets 9 million. Now that's the high score. Mm-hmm. Your mins and maximums record whatever those minimums and maximums are for whatever you want. What's the lowest oil pressure I got? What is the highest boost I ever made? Mm-hmm. No way. I made 37 pounds. When was that? Yeah. It'll do all those mins and maxes. It offers a lot of calculated parameters, which means that we'll take two parameters that your ECM is broadcasting and we'll give you a third. Yep. We'll look at two temperatures, maybe across your intercooler. If you have a turbocharged truck or car, we'll look at your pressure and temperature into the intercooler and pressure and temperature out of the intercooler and tell you what its effectiveness and efficiency is. We'll tell you how effectively it dropped the air temperature across the intercooler. We'll also tell you how much boost you lost across the intercooler and give you the efficiency. It does all these things. So it's not only just a tool for you and me, just like I'm just a numbnut and I'm in the hills and I'm rock crawling and I just want to see trans temp and some other stuff so I don't blow my engine. It also is a valuable tool for engine builders, for tuners. If some guy sells you a new turbo and you're just taking his word at face value that it's better, you can record manifold air density on a cold winter's day, full throttle. 2 days later, you put in the new turbo, do the same run, and you see a lower manifold air density. You know that turbo is not doing its job. He just sold you a bunch of nothing. You know, you just wasted a lot of cash. So there are a lot of, and I won't get into because it gets really into like engineering speak. Some of these parameters, they're incredibly helpful for engine builders and tuners and such. Okay. And for those people who just geek out on it, like it is a data junkie's wet dream.
That's cool.
It's wonderful. But for guys who just do everyday stuff, whether you're driving a Subaru Outback or you have a Tacoma or you've got a diesel pickup truck, it will display all that stuff. If you're just into like, I want to keep my eye on the things to keep my engine safe, it's the ultimate tool for that. Yeah. If you're replacing intercoolers, if you're changing, hell, you can sensor your rear diff and keep an eye on your rear diff temp. Like you can add any external sensor to you that you want to this.
Really?
It will measure anything. You could put this, we have these at Bonneville at the Salt Flats in land speed record cars that are on a Motec or Haltech ECM, or they don't even have a factory ECM. They have no OBD at all. We take the CAN bus out of those and pipe it into the iDash and display it, and we can record it. And we've got them on motorcycles. We have them anywhere where you can put a pressure, temperature, or speed sensor. You can plumb it right into the iDash and display that. And if you want to record that data, you buy the iDash Data Monster. There's two flavors of the iDash. The Super Gauge, which does, so both gauges are identical in every way with the addition of the data logging or recording feature of the Data Monster. Okay. It's kind of like there's two iPhones and they look identical, but one has more features. Yeah. This is the same. Okay. Right? It is the same gauge, and we've activated more features and had another onboard chip to record that data. And your gauge has a micro SD card that slides into the face right under the Banks logo. Have you seen that slot under the Banks logo? Probably didn't even notice it, did you?
I did.
You did? Yeah.
Nice. So right under the Banks logo is a slot, and you put the micro SD card in, and your gauge will record 100 parameters simultaneously at 20 samples per second for 30 days straight, 24 hours a day.
Wow.
That's insane.
It is an insane amount of data.
Wow.
And you can you can either play that data back on the gauge. Like, let's say you're road racing, you can pull back into the pits and just go back, and you can flag. If you hit a button, you can drop flags. Like, oh, I missed a gear. What happened? You can drop a flag, reach up, drop a flag. You get back and you can queue right to those flags. Or if you're more interested in the data and you want to compare different runs, you can slide the SD card out, open it up on your laptop, and either open it in Microsoft Excel and just look at the raw numbers, or you can go to datalogviewer.com, which is our free site, and it graphs it all. And you say, I want to look at boost on this run versus that run, or I want to look at coolant temp on this run versus that run. And it charts it right there for you for free.
Wow. That's pretty freaking cool.
That's really rad.
Now, this gauge also controls your pedal monster. So as you're driving along and you decide that you want to change levels, you just literally reach up and hit up, 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 and then just keep driving. That's it.
You have to let off
down,
the pedal?
down. You do. Okay. Yeah. Just while you're physically touching the button and changing the levels. But it happens so fast. I mean, it's like shifting a manual transmission. Take your foot off, up, 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 foot right back on the gas as fast as I just said.
Do you have to go into a separate setting on the iDash to do that? Or is it just automatically plumbed in and you just hit the up arrows? And
so we have several specific screens for that. So you can monitor. And something else, and I don't know if you guys have played with yours yet. Whether you're looking at it on the app, the mobile app screen on your Android or your iPhone, or you're looking at it on the iDash, we have two bar graphs. Always. Okay. One bar graph, and they move together. One is what your foot is doing on the pedal, and the other is what we're adding.
Oh,
so we're showing you what we are doing in real time. There's no smoke and mirrors. You are seeing the difference of what we're adding at City 1 versus Track 10.
Wow.
It's really neat. And we do that with our tuners as well. We show you what we're adding. If we're adding 61 horsepower at full throttle, we're showing you that as a bar graph as it's being commanded. So it's a great visual tool, and it's nice to know it's fun. It's fun to look at, and you get a visual feedback as well as the seat of your pants.
For sure.
So we have dedicated screens. One's called the Pedal Monster screen. One's the Pedal Monster combo screen, where you have that vertical bar graph, and then you have 3 gauges next to it.
Okay.
And those gauges can be anything you want. And then we have the Pedal Monster Derringer combo. If in fact you have a vehicle like a GP EcoDiesel, you'll have a Pedal Monster throttle controller and a Derringer tuner, and you will control both from the same screen, and you'll have 2 vertical bar graphs. It's super slick.
That's pretty cool. You kind of created this whole little ecosystem for these 3 products that do a lot for
and
vehicle
all of the
performance.
devices. Yeah. And when the devices are all connected, they share a single OBD connection. You don't have like a daisy chain of wires coming out of your OBD port, one daisy, because they form their own miniature CAN bus network. We call it Banks Bus.
Okay.
So they're all on their own network. They all talk to each other. Therefore, they only need one OBD connection.
Nice, because they're sharing all the data from the one OBD to the other devices. The way we just learned about Lowrances and how Lowrance is starting to make this ecosystem of devices, and they're doing the same thing. They're just plugging into the NEMA 2000 ports and creating their own network. So they share data, any of the data they're picking up with all their other devices on that network. So
Yeah, it's cool. And let's say you have a Pedal Monster, or you're thinking about getting one, but you say like, you know what, I have a tuning device. I have an MMM3, or I have, who knows what you have. And you say, how's the Pedal Monster going to work? Because I have this thing already plugged into my OBD port. If you go to the app screen, or you go in through your iDash, you can turn off the OBD communication. So there will be no conflict in data communication. So whatever that tuning device you had, it can communicate freely with your ECM, and the Pedal Monster will not interrupt it.
nice.
So you could set your Pedal Monster at City 5, and then you could tell it to turn it off, and then the other tuning device will do whatever it needs to do, but it'll stay at City 5.
You will still control Pedal Monster. Pedal Monster will do everything. It will act 100% normal, except because it no longer receives data in that mode, with no OBD mode, we call it. It won't receive your gear, and it doesn't receive speed. So you will be missing reverse safety, so you have to back with caution.
Okay.
Or you'll be missing that low speed trim, which we talked about.
Sure.
But other than that, it's exactly the same.
So at that point, you're mainly just using the OBD2 for power.
Correct. Exactly.
You know, one of the coolest features that I didn't realize that was in the iDash is the fact that you can adjust for different tire sizes from stock. And so that I can get the accurate speed of my truck, because I have oversized tires on my truck, right? So I put in what was stock on my vehicle. I put in what my tire size is currently, and now it's projecting the accurate speed for my vehicle on the iDash, where my speedometer gauge is off. It's not correct. So that was really cool, because normally you have to pull up a GPS. Oh, cops around. I'm going to pull my GPS up. So I make sure I'm going 65 miles an hour and I'm not going to get in trouble. But now it's on the iDash all the time.
Nah, it's cool. It's just math.
Yeah.
We're just doing some math in the background. Yeah, that's a really neat feature. And for those who are listening in Canada or in the UK or whatever, yes, it's available. Everything you can convert to metric. You just go into the settings and it'll display everything in centimeters or bar or whatever it is, kilometers per hour. So that's neat too. We've thought of, I think, everything. And we've got some really neat stuff coming too. The great part is, just like your iPhone, we just push updates. And you just download the update, slide your SD card in, hit update, boop, in 90 seconds, you have new firmware on your iDash. Same thing with the Pedal Monster. So it's a great ecosystem. We're really, really proud of it.
That's pretty cool. That's really exciting. I'm glad we got to sit down and do this interview, because I loved my iDash. I have it for the 350 and I got it for towing so that I could watch all the different engine diagnostics while I'm towing. But I just learned that there's a bunch more other shit it can do. That's awesome. And I'm really excited to get that Pedal Monster in there and start trying that out, because I was a little concerned, not going to lie, because I mainly use the truck just for towing. It's not a performance vehicle by any means. I'm not using it out on a track or drifting or anything. It's a 350 dually. I'm like, why would I want a Pedal Monster in there?
Could be fun to drift, though.
It could be fun to drift. But yeah, after talking with you, I'm like, okay, this actually sounds like it could be a really nice thing to.
A lot of people don't realize how much throttle lag, whatever you want to call it, how much their truck has or their car has. And we have found interest in places we didn't expect. Ram 1500 pickups with naturally aspirated 5.7 liters. It's one of our biggest markets. Go figure.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no turbo lag. There's no turbo.
Yeah.
But what the reason is, we believe, is because Ram, Stellantis, they program that pedal to be so mushy in the middle that the drivers just don't like it. They just don't. They're like, there's a big 5.7 liter V8. Like, why is it performing this way?
Yeah.
I don't want to have to mat the throttle every time, right? So I think that you'll find that the pedal the truck feels more responsive.
Okay.
When you get it in. And you don't have to go on track 2. You might like City 4. You might like something very mild. And whether you like the tip in, just the right off the line, that tip in, or do you want it deeper into the pedal where you've got more response? That's up to you, where you can control that, right?
That's pretty nice. It adds a lot of customizable feel to how you want to drive too. So that's cool.
I'm very proud of you, Tyler, for not giggling through that.
Just the
tip in, or
just get the
a
tip
little
in.
bit further.
Yeah, I'm surprised you guys went without saying it. Well, so that's we talked about us getting into gas and stuff so we're kind of tippy-toeing back into gas performance with these devices. And so one's instrumentation diagnostics with the iDash, and the other is the throttle controller. I will say that we're going to be launching a lot of neat things for the 24 Tacoma, and then we're going to be going backwards and filling in all the holes in our product line for Tundras, Tacomas, Jeeps, etc. You might find this surprising, but our number one header system that we sell for all vehicles, guess. I want you to guess. Number one header.
I'm going to go with the Toyota 3.0.
Oh.
Because that's a terrible header design.
It is.
You need to get rid of it.
I don't know. I'll guess a Subaru Outback style.
Jeep 4-liter.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Jeep 4-liter. They get old. They crack. None of the aftermarket companies make really good ones. And somehow back in the late 90s, Gale made one that was just better. And it has a patented, he calls it the Power Pickle. It is a scavenging device inside.
Okay.
And you pick up 20 horsepower, no smoke and mirrors. Throw it on a dyno. We welcome anyone to dyno their Jeep before and after. 20 horsepower with this set of headers. And we're just relaunching it. We're going to bring it's been incredibly successful since it was new in the 90s. And it's never stopped. It blows us away. And I guess that engine, that Jeep engine, just creates so much heat. The heat cycles just really play havoc with those headers, the factory headers. Okay. And nobody in the aftermarket makes really good ones that last, and ours do. Nice. So we just we kill it with those headers. So we're going to supplement all those headers with. Okay, it's the 99. Hold on, so I'm going to give you the year range.
There's usually a lot of the XJs had those inline 4 liters.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, they do. We
apparently have a lot of XJ listeners. So
we do.
So 91 to 99. And 2000 to 06. There's two different part numbers, but basically 91 to 2006.
That's cool. Well, I know we do have quite a few XJ listeners. And XJ's definitely especially that inline 4-liter. It's such an awesome off-road rock crawling engine. So they're very prevalent in the realms of people that Jimmy and I deal with a lot. So if you guys are interested in those headers, definitely hit up Banks. I did have another question, going back a little bit to the iDash. The iDash that you guys have are only for 2008 and newer OBD2s?
So the iDash will display, 2008 or newer, it will display more.
Gotcha.
Again, if you brought me a lawnmower and we wanted to put sensors on the lawnmower, we can do that. And it will display whatever pressure, temp, and speed sensors, delta pressure sensor, whatever you want. Okay. We can display that. All we have to do is we sell all the sensors and all the intermediate modules that turn the analog signals to data and then pass it along to the iDash so it can display it. We sell everything. Okay. We have diagrams on how to kit it up, basically, whether you have a supercharged engine, you have a turbocharged engine, naturally aspirated engine, straight V, whatever.
So if somebody has like a 97 so my 4Runner has a 97 Tacoma engine and drive, well, not a full drivetrain in it, but the engine in there. So it's an older analog style ECU with OBD2. Is an iDash going to work just fine on those?
It will display some, but not as much as you'd like.
Okay.
In that particular case, I would either recommend a device, a dongle.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to say it, a dongle that you'd buy on Amazon or something, like you said, with Torque or something. Or if you know that there weren't sensors, and in many cases where the iDash shines is that with Torque, you can't add sensors to that system. It is what it is, because all you can do is plug it into the OBD port.
Yeah.
So where we shine with the iDash is you say, Jay, I know this doesn't have trans temp.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't have trans temp. It was too early for that. So we can plumb in a sensor and send that to the iDash. Now you've got a sensor that wasn't there stock.
Gotcha.
And that happens all day. Every day we're selling iDashes. There he is, right?
I need that.
Yep. So we do that all day. For you would be stunned on the number of vehicles and the bizarre vehicles that guys are buying iDashes for and plumbing in their own sensors.
Okay.
So from race vehicles, everyday drivers, they're curious about something. Hell, if you have a transfer flow tank in your bed of your truck, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got an auxiliary tank and it's got no float in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can put your own float sensor in there and plumb that into the iDash and have, it's just a 0 to 5 volt sensor. So all you do is in the iDash, you tell it the scaling, what 0 volts means and what 5 volts means. And 0 is empty and 5 volts is full, and you just label it and say fuel tank. And now all of a sudden, here you are in your A-pillar, you're seeing your auxiliary fuel tank level.
That's cool.
You can do that with anything. Again, the iDash doesn't care. And all you do is set it up in the back end of the iDash, what that sensor is, what its values are, and you're done.
That's cool. Okay. I might be getting another one then.
I'm going to need another one as well.
You can daisy chain up to 4 of them. It's freaking bonkers. I've seen guys that looks like NASA inside of the cab of their truck. It gets pretty wild.
Is that because they're too lazy to flip screens?
A little bit. And, there's gadgeteers.
Yeah.
Guys like carry 2 iPhones. You're like, why do you know? Oh, I have one for work and one from come on now. But yeah, guys just love, and also some of it is a holdover. You've seen the old diesel guys from the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, mainly 2000s, who have 4 analog gauges,
up on their pillars,
right?
yeah.
They're all pink or they're all blue or whatever, right? And that's kind of a holdover. They just like that old school look of multiple gauges. And then you say, dude, you're displaying 40 parameters simultaneously. There's like, are you seeing all that?
He's got a two gauge on each one. So he's got 4 gauges up with reading 8 sensors.
Yes. So you can, I think, go for it. If it makes you happy, I'll sell you 4.
Yeah.
I think if the other use case would be, let's say you wanted bigger numbers, right? Maybe your vision's just not that good and you want physically larger 1/2 inch tall numbers, then you would go to 2 gauge layout and then you'd want multiple gauges, right? So I've got 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, right? In there, that makes sense, I suppose. Giant numbers.
I guess especially if you're like in a racing application, like off-road racing, where you're bouncing around all the time, you can't read the little numbers. So you do need some bigger numbers kind of thing too. So
yeah, but in that case, you're setting up alerts.
That's
you're
true.
not even looking at the numbers. You're looking at the race course. So you're setting up high and low alerts.
Gotcha.
So it's barking at you with these big amber boxes saying oil pressure or speed or trans temp or shift. We have shift lights.
Yeah.
There's a shift light. Yeah, you saw that.
I saw that
we have
one.
a shift light too for manual trans.
Nice.
Yeah. So it does a lot. Anyway, we make a lot of parts, but those are the ones I was really excited to talk to you guys about. And I appreciate you giving me the time. That's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And,
It's fun to nerd out over when companies combine technology with vehicles, right? A lot of times I think that, especially from the older generations of guys out there and gals, the hot rodders or so, they want to keep their carburetors. They want to keep, old school muscle. And I'm like, I want to know more data. I want to know the nerdy side of stuff. And how can we incorporate more of that into vehicles and performance and what we're doing with these machines out there. So anytime we get a chance to do that, I think it's a lot of fun.
Gale Banks is the biggest nerd. Like he just loves the data. And when you see these spreadsheets that he goes over and he's able to analyze, he is a genius.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that because he's my boss. The man is a genius, and anyone that has a conversation with him and someone who's equally as intelligent will say, that guy's sharp. Like that's incredible. He's won awards and he has more than 20 patents, and it's really neat. It's neat just to be in his presence, and he's charming and freaking funny. You know, he's always dropping zingers, and it's a good place to work. I'm not like I'm trying to hire anybody right now. Like, yeah, if you want to work at banks, like, but if you are a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, we're looking for firmware engineers right now. But it's a really, really cool spot. And like we started the conversation, all these buildings, all this office furniture, everything we build, this is all one dude and his family.
Yeah.
So his son and daughter, Liz, Colin, they run the day-to-day. And it's a really neat family business. It's huge. You know, I mean, it's not huge. I don't have 175 employees, so it's not huge, right? We're not a Fortune 500 company. But I just think it's neat in the aftermarket because you hear so much. I'm sure you guys do about consolidation. All the wheel companies are owned by Hoonigan now, or Holly owns everyone, or like all the consolidation. And he has zero interest in selling the company, zero. And as a matter of fact, he gets insulted when people try and buy him out. And trust me, it's happened because he goes, it really hurts my feelings that they think they can run this company better than I can run this company. They think they're smarter than I am. Yeah. I'll show them. We're going to make more money next year or whatever it is, or we're going to make a better this. We're going to improve upon that. Yep. He's insulted. Yeah. It's funny. You wouldn't expect that. Most guys are like, ooh, they offered me a bag of cash for this company. Yeah.
Well, that just goes to show and prove that he's still super passionate about what he's doing. He's enjoying what he's doing and the things that you guys are creating and the waves and the new technologies you guys are coming out with. So it's cool when somebody can be offered to be bought out and get shut down, because that means that the company is not done innovating and they're not done rocking and rolling. So
did you hear what we did with a Humvee?
No.
We were contracted by RCCTO, RCCTO, the Rapid, I don't forget what the acronym stands for, RCCTO. It's a department of the Army, the U.S. Army. And they were tasked with, they're kind of like the skunk works of the Army. Can we make this new technology work? Okay. And they were tasked with teaming up with consumer companies to build a hybrid Humvee, a diesel hybrid Humvee. Okay. So we won this. We bid. We said we think we can do it. We know we can do it, and we won. This was us and a university somewhere in the Midwest. We were the only two, and we went about it very, very different ways. And we built a P2 hybrid Humvee. Nice. What that means is it has a 3-liter diesel engine, an eco diesel you'd find in a Ram or a Jeep. 3-liter diesel in front of a motor generator unit in front of the transmission. Yep. So we can run on the engine, we can run on the motor, the electric motor, or both. So you have zero range anxiety. You can run silently into enemy territory. It'll run on basically any diesel fuel in any part of the world. It checks every box. So we turned this in just before Christmas. We built it, took us 18 months to build it. We did it here on site, all of our own tech. And it is currently in Maryland at the proving ground. They're the U.S. Army's proving ground. Aberdeen. Yeah. And they are putting it through all the tests. And so far it is passing with flying colors.
That's pretty awesome.
And it's super, super cool.
That's pretty cool.
There might be some more in our future, but we are right there. And that with diesel hybrid tech, Gail is a big fan. That's our next move, is getting into hybrid. Okay. Not EV. I'll be clear. I'm not saying that EV is not good. EV is awesome for many around town use cases. Yep. But for serious work, hybrid solves and checks a lot of those boxes, solves a lot of those issues that we face going into the future, from emissions to power, economy, all those things. Anyway, so you talked about innovating. Yeah. We're freaking innovating. It's really neat.
Sorry. So you have turbo diesel P2 hybrid, correct?
That's correct.
How much torque is that thing putting out?
I can't say specific numbers.
Holy crap.
I can't. I literally can't. The
Yeah.
Army will not give us. We can. We are coming out with a video. If you go to, I encourage anyone that's interested in banks, even casually, we have a pretty entertaining and very informative YouTube channel. So it's just at Banks Power on YouTube.
Okay.
We're also on Facebook and all the normal platforms, but we do a lot of video, and it's very informative. It's data rich. And if you're a data junkie, it's the place for you. But again, like I said, Gail is charming and funny. So just when he might be losing you with some getting really into the weeds with data, he's got a zinger and he brings you right back in. And we've got some series, but we are detailing the Humvee in an upcoming series. So how we did it, why we did it, and all those things.
That's pretty
and
cool.
we have to answer a lot of those questions in percentages. Like we performed X% better than stock or X% better than the Army asked for. They won't let me give specific numbers because then I guess it gets into enemy hands. I don't know.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's cool. I've been a huge fan of P2 hybrid ever since the hybrids kind of came on the scene. I started learning about how's the different way to configure hybrids. I'm like, P2 is the way to go. Anybody who's making a hybrid.
It's funny that you know that because most people, they don't know what P1, P2 and series means. Right.
Yep.
For the layman's terms, more or less, a P2 hybrid's just replacing a torque converter with the motor of the electrical system or the electrical motor. So that's So it's just
basically
taking the engine and going into the electric motor, and then all that is connected into the transmission.
And the P means parallel, but it's not. And so what I found out, it's not. And I always assumed that the parallel meant like the drivetrain was in parallel. It's not. It's the power delivery, meaning where's it getting its source of energy? That's whether it's in parallel or series.
Gotcha.
And whether it's the fuel and the electricity are in parallel, or if it's just series would be just electricity passing through. So anyway, I don't want to get into that and confuse anyone because I'm not an expert. I just play one on TV. Stuff. But I do encourage, the guy who's knocking on my window right now, my ride home, he is the expert. He's the one that designed the system. Nice. It's funny. I carpool with him.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, man. This has been a lot of fun. I'm really glad we got to sit down and got to make this podcast happen. If people have extra questions for Banks, wants to learn more about what you guys are doing, obviously the YouTube channel, you've already talked about that. Is there any other great places for people to go check those information out?
I mean, everything is at bankspower.com. Okay. So all the products, year, make, model, look up, super easy search tool. Bankspower.com is where you'll find the parts, the pedal monster, the iDash, intake, exhaust, all that good stuff. YouTube, at Banks Power. Everything we have is at Banks Power. Cool. Gail was really early on the internet. So everything is at Banks Power. Sweet. And I'd love to chat with you sometimes. We didn't get to talk about the podcast, Truck Show Podcast,
on that.
Yeah. We're in the podcasting space. We do a lot of it is what it is. Yep. Truck Show Podcast. It sounds like a morning radio show, and we cover a lot. We talk to a lot of the OEs. We talked to a lot of innovators. So I'm sure we've interviewed some of the same people, but we lean heavily into heads of design and engineering at the OEs, innovators, entrepreneurs, new tech, things like that. We do a lot of truck news, cover all the current events, things like that. And it's a good time. It's Truck Show Podcast. Perfect. So if you guys like Snail Trail, chances are you'll enjoy the Truck Show Podcast as well.
Awesome. I'll definitely add all those links that we've been talking about down in the show notes. I do have one more question for you.
Who tried to steal my TRX last weekend?
What? Did that happen?
That was the second question. Did someone try to steal your TRX?
Yeah, that happened.
Oh shit!
Was it
Sean? It sucked giant donkey balls. It was awful.
No,
no, it was not Sean, my co-host. It is crazy, and I want to get this out here because I'm professing this to anyone that will listen right now.
Yeah.
So I have a TRX Mopar. You guys have probably heard that like Hellcats are being stolen everywhere. It was getting really, really bad in Texas. Now it's all over. Now it's really bad in Southern California. And I'm sure you've seen on the news where there's two methods by which they can steal your Mopar. It happens in some of the Camaros, and you've maybe seen Kias, right? It's happening in Kias as well. There's two ways. They either go outside your house. So everyone has a key fob these days, right? Most modern cars have key fobs, and those key fobs are emitting signals, RF. And they can either use a big antenna and they capture that by standing out in your front yard, and they capture that signal and they walk back to the vehicle and then they replicate that signal, and it thinks the key fob's in their pocket, and they open the door and they get in and they drive away because it thinks the key isn't with them. Okay. In my case, they didn't do that. In my case, they just shattered the sliding back window and shimmied in the truck. And now they were in the truck. They didn't need the key. So what they do is they have a handheld device, and they reach into my dashboard, and they rip out the CAN bus connection, which is about a block of wires, like 30 wires on a block that's behind. I've got a rotary headlight switch to the left of the steering wheel. Yeah. And they reached their hand inside and they pulled out the block, just yanked it out with all the wires still attached. And on the backside of this block are all these chips, those microprocessors, and they're all CAN bus chips. So they have now all the CAN bus of the vehicle, both body control module, EC, like everything in their hand. And they have a little device that just plugs right on the back.
Oh, no shit.
And then they go into this iPad type deal, and they attempt to put the truck into key pairing mode. Oh, as if they were a dealer, as if they're a dealer.
Okay.
And they're telling, the customer lost the key. I need to pair it with a new key. And they're going to lock my key out and their key in and just drive my truck away.
Wow.
Dudes, check this out. 2 weeks ago, I installed a device called an Igla. That's IGLA. And I did a bunch of research, and there's not that many people who install these things. It's from the Czech Republic, and the whole thing sounds super sketchy. I'm not going to lie. Like you've heard of Viper and CompuStar and all these other alarms and all this other stuff. But what this device does is it blocks all traffic to the body control module until you put in a code on your steering wheel.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
So the body, why does that matter? The body control module is what stores all of the key information.
Gotcha.
So the guy gets in my truck, there's broken glass everywhere, and he rips the thing out, he connects it, and he goes to connect, and it won't connect to his little, and he can't connect to create a new key, and he bounces.
Wow.
It is the only reason I installed this device 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
My truck would be at the home of some cartel boss in Mexico if I hadn't had that device installed.
Yeah.
There ain't that many guys who install it, but if you've heard of Igla, book an appointment. It ain't cheap. It's $1,200 to have it installed.
Better than losing an $80,000 truck.
Where can you get a TRX for $80,000?
Yeah, right. True.
So I screwed up and I didn't have a standard alarm. All my other trucks have had alarms on them. I've had Vipers, like I said, CompuStars, you name it. I've had them, and they bark and whine and turn on all the lights and stuff. So when the guy busted the glass, nothing happened. It was silent. That was my bad. I'm a moron. I should have put an alarm on the truck. So I will be doing that now. As soon as they fix my back window, which is 2 weeks on back order right now, because they're busting so many back windows that they're 2 weeks back order. And I'm going to put an alarm in. But if you guys have, whether it's a Ram 1500 or if it's any of the Hellcat products, they're paying big money for these things, cash, and they're hot commodities. Look up Igla, IGLA. And I'm sure it's going to create a backlog because my dude was 6 months out.
Wow.
I begged him because our warehouse manager, his son's Hellcat Challenger or Charger got stolen from his front yard. By the way, this happened at 6:20 in the morning with the sun up at my house in my driveway. And the same thing happened at 6:15 a.m. in Upland, California at my warehouse manager's house. His son's Hellcat got stolen. They're brazen, broad daylight. Don't give a rat's ass.
Wow.
So they get in and hijack your shit. So if IGLA, it's the only device that does this that I'm aware of. So if there's a guy in your area and you own one of these, I have no interest in the company. I don't make a penny, but I am here to tell you, and I'm professing, because when something makes this big of an impact on you, you're like a believer. I'm a believer of this product. And I don't even know where it is in my car, my truck. Dude, they won't tell you where they install it.
Oh, wow. They keep it that secret. That's cool.
I used to be in the car stereo industry when I was a kid. I ran a car stereo shop in Orange County, California. And I know where the modules are. I know that. And they would not tell me where they hit it. He goes, dude, if you want this installed, walk away. I'm not even joking. He says, come back in 3 hours. Dang. So I did. He did it over here in the parking lot next to me. And he says, close the gate. No one can watch where I put it. He goes, none of the Igla installers will watch can watch any of us put it in. It's secret because once word gets out, they'll know what it looks like. So what you get as a customer, you get a little tiny cardboard box and some instructions. You don't even know what the module looks like.
Oh, wow.
You're not even allowed to see the freaking module. It's so cool.
That's
anyway,
neat.
I don't mean to go on like a rant, but that just really moved me recently. Like I would not have, and I customized my truck. You know, I've got HRE wheels on it, Willwood brakes. You know, I've got compressors. I've got I had a whole bunch of full audio system. Like I go nuts. You know, I'm an aftermarket guy. I love this shit. And that would have really sucked.
Yeah.
To have all that work just gone.
Yep.
And that one little device saved it.
That's awesome.
So anyway, rant over.
All right.
That's cool.
Well, that's a fantastic story. I'm glad you shared it. We'll definitely link that company down there as well. But I wanted to know, my one question was, now that turned to two. My one question was early in the episode, you talked about how Gale was taking a Firebird to Bonneville to race it, and he hated the diesel that was towing that truck. How did the Firebird do? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. Land speed record.
Oh, sweet.
Land speed records. I'm sorry, I left out a huge part of the story. Yeah. It's hanging on our wall. Yeah, land speed record. It was amazing. They wanted 300. He got, I believe it was 287. And at that point, there was some conditions with the track, and he felt that it was unsafe to send the driver at that point to 300 miles an hour. And the press person at Pontiac was saying, "We need 300." And he says, "That's all you're going to get." He had shattered the record prior, and I forget what the speed was, but it was really fast. So imagine that speed in 1980. It was like 1985 or 6 or something. Now today, people freak out about a Bugatti going 280, 300 miles an hour. It's $1 million car. Gale Banks was doing that with a twin turbo Firebird in the mid 80s. Like, get out.
That's awesome.
That's crazy.
You know? Yeah. So it's really neat. If you just Google Gale Banks Firebird or Gale Banks Bonneville or solve any of those terms, you'll see the car pop up, plenty of pictures, the whole thing. It's very well documented. There's a lot of really fun stories. I did a podcast called Banks Speed School, which if you're any of the normal places, actually, no, I take it back. It's just on Apple Podcasts. If you're into some of that historic, those cool stories, those jaunt down memory lane and kind of Gale's history, there's about a dozen episodes of Banks Speed School available that are really, really neat.
That's cool. I'm going to check those out.
And one of these is he talked to, well, I don't want to spoil it. You got to go and check it out. There's really, really good stuff. It's fascinating.
Cool. We'll definitely check that out. We'll put some links down in the show notes for everybody. We'll put links how to get a hold of you guys, how to find you guys. Jimmy, if people want to get a hold of us or maybe they have questions for Jay, they can call in. How can they do that? We can pass on to Jay.
Yeah, you can phone us at 916-345-4744. You can also hit us up on Instagram. I'm over at Snail Trail 4x4. Tyler's at 4x4 Toyota Tyler. And if you do have questions for Jay, you can direct them towards us and we will filter them over there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can send them. Or I can get about an email address as well. There's kind of a corporate box that I check on every single day, which is socialmedia@bankspower.com.
Perfect.
There's a couple of us. But if you have a Banks specific question, or if you want to get to me specifically, it's lightning@truckshowpodcast.com. You guys never clown me for that silly nickname, but that's a holdover from my morning radio when everyone was given stupid nicknames.
Yeah.
But lightning@truckshowpodcast.com is where you'll find me, and I'm on that as well.
Or they can go find all the Ram and Stellantis and Jeep Facebook groups too and find you in there too. So
you can, sadly. Yes.
Well,
shows you what I do with my spare time.
Well, awesome, Jay. Thanks for coming on, man. We'll have you back. We'll have to coordinate getting you back on to talk about the Truck Show podcast and some of the fun stuff you're doing over there. So
awesome.
Yeah, dude.
All right, guys. Keep up the good work.
All right, you too,
Enjoy
man.
the show. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Later.
Why do people go to a sports stadium on a hot day?
A sports stadium on a hot day. No idea.
because of all the fans.